Folks, it's time to back that ass up and to back out of your really bad backed takes. And there are no more backed puns from me. What's going on, everybody? It is your boy, Crypto Bobby. I hope you are having a great day, great night, wherever you're watching or listening in from. And like we talked about last week, coming with episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from here on out with the occasional crypto happy hour in between. If you are new to the channel, make sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe. But today we're talking about Bakkt because Bakkt was the great white institutional hope that was going to save Bitcoin and to save cryptocurrency and to just cure everything on the planet. Or was it? And there are a lot of takes out there right now about Bakkt that are happening. And like we talked about, it was the great hope that was going to save Bitcoin, and it has been slight crickets so far. So naturally, anybody who is bearish on Bitcoin, bearish on cryptocurrencies, is coming out and doing a little jig and celebrating and dancing and having a great time. So let's take a step back and try and look at things rationally, because that's what I occasionally try to do on this channel. So we're going to take a look, rationally speaking, at everything with Bakkt and a lot more in today's discussion. So why does Bakkt even matter? Well, one of the big reasons that Bakkt matters in general is the company that's behind it, Intercontinental Exchange, or ICE. Now, you may not have heard of ICE, you may not have heard of Intercontinental Exchange, but you most certainly have heard of their largest subsidiary if you have any familiarity with just general markets, and that is their subsidiary, the New York Stock Exchange. NYSE is actually owned by ICE. So now you have a company that owns the New York Stock Exchange that is now directly participating in Bitcoin financial products of some sort or another. That alone is pretty big in terms of the industry as a whole and how far we've come. So as of September 22nd, Bakkt went live with their Bitcoin futures, and they have a daily Bitcoin contract as well as a monthly Bitcoin futures contract that they currently have available for individuals. And the big difference is this is a highly regulated financial product that the quote-unquote institutions or the serious institutional investors of the world will have or can have some comfort in terms of utilizing and acquiring and holding it on their books. So this is a really big step for the industry and has been touted by a lot of people for a really long time that this was going to be a big deal. Now, people in general have kept a very close eye on what's happened with both the daily contract for Bakkt and the monthly contract. Now, the monthly contract has had about 71, you could see here if we're looking on the website right now, about 71 contracts worth of volume. Each contract is a Bitcoin, so 71 Bitcoin worth of volume. So in general, right now, you're looking at less than $1 million in daily volume, which is leading many people to already classify Bakkt as a failure. This is something that was supposed to save Bitcoin, was supposed to get the widest spread adoption that you could possibly think of, and the institutions were going to flow in, right? That's what you heard. And now you see, okay, this has less than $1 million in volume in its first 24 hours. Big failure, right? Well, some people are saying that, and we'll take a look. So Jonathan Cho, Jay Cho, who is a Bitcoin bear, crypto bear in general, has like 5,000 followers on Twitter, talks a lot about why he's bearish on Bitcoin. So he said, and this was 10:30 Eastern time this morning, cryptos are falling hard within half a day of Bakkt. Shocked. Did I not tell you the Bakkt hoopla was Bakkt bullshit for a year? That BTC does not have the econ properties needed to be a money, that it is not supply stock to flow, but demand that matters more, the opposite of what Bitcoiners say. And first of all, Bitcoin is down about 2%. So let's not act like this is some type of terrible failure here. But people are going to look at what happens with Bakkt as a in the immediate term, depending upon how fast or not so fast that this picks up, people are going to look at what happens with Bakkt and try to point to it as a failure if they are bearish. Everybody uses specific things to fit their own narratives, and everything in life, especially in the crypto markets, is about fitting your narrative and talking your book. If you are actively short Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, you're looking at this right now and saying, haha, you idiots. You were talking about backed for a year. You were waiting for this thing and this financial contract that the big dogs are supposed to go out there and trade and to acquire Bitcoin, whatever it might be, physically settled Bitcoin. You're going to have less than $1 million in daily volume within the first 24 hours of launch. That's pathetic. But on the other end of the spectrum, you have to take things into consideration. You have to look at things with a greater picture. And Suzu, who's always one of my favorites in just crypto Twitter in general, also Leo Bull, shout out Suzu. But Suzu said, backed will likely be first a trickle, then a flood. The reality is that most regulated futures contracts get low adoption on day one simply because not all futures brokers are ready to clear it. Many people want to wait and see. The tickers are not even populated on risk systems, etc. And that's something that I think a lot of people just don't like. Nobody has patience in Bitcoin. Nobody has patience in crypto. It's something that trades 24/7, 365, which removes all elements of patience, of just rational thought, of really anything in general. It is something that is, because of how schizophrenic and ridiculous the market can be in many aspects and in many times, you have this just super rush to judgment. And Nomad, who's another just kind of, I think, somebody with good, quote unquote, institutional thoughts or on more of the regulated exchanges, also the same thing, kind of thought process there, where he says, guys, backed will take months to show any real market impact, if at all. The only difference between this and other launches we've seen thus far is ICE actually lined up clearing and brokers to be ready day one. Both CBOE and CME had only 1 to 2 small DCMs. Nobody had accounts with. So you have to set things into just realistic expectations. And I think that's something that a lot of individuals just in general in the crypto world have problems with. And everybody just gets really hyped up about things. In some cases, I think a lot of individuals, just generally speaking, got really built up on this backed FOMO that it was going to be this incredible product that on day one was just going to change the face of the world because you have ICE, the parent company of the New York Stock Exchange, behind it. And that was going to really just take everything off and all of a sudden Bitcoin would go to the moon. Obviously, that hasn't occurred. It hasn't been a negative either. The thing that you have to think about too, and this was said in a Telegram group that I'm in, and it was a really good thought. I'm not going to give the person's name away. But so he said this. He said, as recently as 5 years ago, you could only buy Bitcoin on a repurposed Magic the Gathering card trading website, aka Mt. Gox. And now today you can trade Bitcoin via a physically settled derivative in a marketplace run by one of the world's largest exchanges and clearinghouse owners, aka the New York Stock Exchange and ICE. If you're focused on day one volume, you may need to take a step back, zoom out mentally, and see what is going on here. And I really do agree that that is the key to all of this, is taking a step back and just relaxing. When you look at what's happening, again, one of the largest kind of exchanges and clearinghouses in the world is now offering a physically settled derivative product for Bitcoin that is heavily regulated and can be adopted by larger investors. Does that mean that larger investors are going to adopt it? No, but it does mean that the possibility is there. And that is, I suppose, what matters, and I suppose what makes a difference. But everybody expecting things the second and gimme, now, just take a step back and relax, because things take time to develop, especially when you're talking about regulated financial products and you're not talking about some ICO, IEO, whatever it might be. Things take time to develop when you're actually dealing with real businesses and not a bunch of retail investors tossing ETH or BNB or whatever it is at the latest product out there. So in other news that is unrelated to Bakkt, which surprisingly there is news unrelated to Bakkt today, This was a thread that I thought was pretty interesting. Got a lot of traction on Twitter because if you say anything good about Bitcoin, you're going to get traction on Twitter, obviously. But this is from Jared Dillian, and this is somebody I randomly read a book that was completely unrelated about Bitcoin from. This was a few years ago, actually. But I read his book, Street Freak Money and Madness at Lehman Brothers, which I recommend you give a look. I'll put a link in the description to it on Amazon or Audible, whatever you want to check it out. But definitely a crazy book just about how nuts Wall Street was kind of in the 2000s. But so he is now an author and just a financial commentator in general, has a newsletter and some other things as well. But so Jared said this on Twitter, and I thought it was definitely worth the conversation around. It says, I'm a former Bitcoin skeptic that is now a Bitcoin believer. Thread. The thing that turned me off to crypto wasn't the technology or the principles behind it. It was the cult surrounding it. Bitcoin Jesus, Coin Daddy, all that nonsense. Shout out Coin Daddy. Nobody calls Roger Ver Bitcoin Jesus anymore. For the love of God, stop that. To a seasoned investor, this was a sure sign of a bubble, and it was. Also, it was the idiotic risk management. The crypto world is full of people who say they will never sell. That's what the gold world was like in 2011. Everything is a trade. Everything is meant to be sold at some time. I get it, you hate fiat, and someday we will all be transacting in Bitcoin, etc., etc. But in the meantime, everything is a trade, and the XBT USD relationship fluctuates over time. Be a trader. As for the cult stuff, I've seen quite a few investment cults in my lifetime. .com was the biggest. Funny thing about .com, you had your share of Jesuses and rappers back then, and then the tech had a decade-long bear market, and the real bull market began. The FANG that we have today with trillion-dollar market caps is the echo of the .com boom 20 years later. That is what crypto is going through now in compressed time. The bubble phase is over. The real investment phase has begun. I don't think it's possible for my conviction to get much higher. I won't go into detail here, but it is mostly because of the worrying political developments. There's never been more of a need for a stateless currency, and that will only increase. BTC end. A lot to unpack in that, and I think a really interesting discussion overall around his investment thesis and comparison to the .com bubble. That has, Bitcoin has been and crypto has been compared to the .com bubble in the past. And I do think when you look at it, it does bear obviously some striking resemblances when you take into consideration what the two are kind of looking at. But then you also look at the compressed time frame that the crypto market is currently in. I do like the point where he does say the real investment phase has begun. And on a side note, going back to it, tools like Bakkt are allowing for a real investment phase. You don't need to go on Mt. Gox anymore to buy, not that you've had to in a number of years, but you don't need to go on sketchy exchanges to buy Bitcoin if you want to, if you have real money. I'm not talking about $5,000. If you are a multimillionaire trying to scale into the asset, or if you are a family office or whatever it is, the real investment phase is here. The infrastructure is starting to get built out. And for him, for Jared, a lot of the information, a lot of his conviction stems from the political developments around the world. Obviously, there's a lot of geopolitical stuff happening, the macro environment with a lot of the quantitative easing that's kind of restarting, all that type of stuff. There is a lot of things at a global level that are really encouraging for the Bitcoin to USD trade pair. I also think that he does make some valid points around everything in life is a trade. Everything is a trade, and that, at some point in time, you should freaking sell and you should take profits. And I think that's where a lot of people fell off in the past when looking at some of their crypto holdings in general. But I thought that was a good tweet storm. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed Jared's book in the past that was completely unrelated to Bitcoin. We'll include links to both below, but would love to hear your thoughts. What are you thinking about Bakkt? Are you super disappointed? Are you giving it time? And then also, what do you think about Jared's tweet storm in general? If you are new to the YouTube channel by any chance, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the thumbs up button if you're on the podcast as well. Make sure to leave a rating and a review. Crypto Bobby signing out. Hope you have a good one. Peace.